Welcome to Bunnyfish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as Bunnyfish on Ravelry, Plurk, Instagram, and YouTube. Today is Monday, the 24th of January, 2014, and this is episode 67, Winter Games Winner. Grab some sticks and string and come sit with me. Big news this week in the land of mommy. Gabriel lost his first baby tooth. I know, right? I was not emotionally prepared for it. He came up to me and he was eating an apple and he was like, "Mom, my tooth hurts." And I was like, go eat your apple. Because he watches movies and shows where kids, are losing teeth and stuff. And he's been playing at it for like a year. So way before he could possibly have teeth loose. He's almost 5.5 now. So he's still on the young-ish side. But it's still normal. It's just like the younger side of normal. Anyway, he came up to me and I told him to eat his apple, and then he came back and he was like, "Look, my tooth." And there was a little white thing in his hand, but it could have just as easily been a piece of apple, which he has done before. He's like taken a tiny bite and put it in his hand and been like, "Look, Mom, it's a tooth." And so I turned back around to look at him and he had a little hole in his mouth. I was not emotionally prepared for that. Like, he hasn't been saying it's been loose or anything to me at all. It came out of nowhere. So I called my sister and I was like, "I'm not ready for this." Gabriel lost a tooth. And she was not ready for it. And then she was like, "You know what? Cecilia has a loose tooth." That's my niece. And they are about 6 weeks apart. She's younger than he is. So I guess my family just loses teeth on the early side. Oh, we made something that I forgot. He lost his tooth, and he and I made a little pillow for the tooth fairy. He insisted it have a button, and whatever. I have 11D7 buttons. So there's the button, and here's the pocket, so that the tooth fairy could easily find the tooth, because they're really itty bitty, these teeth. So we made this little pillow with a pocket on it. And it's just, I have a bolt of muslin, so I just cut off a little rectangle and we sewed it together and it was good. So yeah, that happened and I was not ready for it. Let's see. So the knit along, there are 4 FOs, or they were when I checked this morning. Maybe there are more now. I don't know. There are 4. You guys are awesome, because I haven't even started mine yet. So good job. Another knit along coming up, the Greek Fire Mystery Knit Along by Josh Ricks. Last week, I think it was last week when I was showing you the yarn, I said that I didn't break 250 on any of them. That was a lie from my mouth. Accidental. Color B, I used almost 290 yards. But the other 2 were less than 250. So if that helps you figure out what you're going to use for the mystery knit along, I hope you're going to join. The pattern is great. And it's complicated enough to keep it interesting, but not so complicated that you want to throw your knitting across the room. So yeah, go do that. I'm all flustered because my cat walked in and now he's walking around on my desk. Finished objects. I have 2. The first is the To the Moon socks by Megan Williams in an unknown fingering weight yarn. I made those on US size 1, 2.25 millimeters. I made them in the child size. Gabriel loves them. I finished the first one last week and he tried it on and I took pictures and everything because it was a test knit. And he was like, "Oh, where's the other sock?" And I was like, "Well, I haven't made it yet. I needed to see if that one fit." And he was like, "Oh." So I finished the other one yesterday evening while I was at knitting, and put it on his foot when he got home so I could take pictures of both and my test knitting could be finished. And he wore them. He liked them a lot. And then he took a bath before bed, and I went in after bath time to scoop up the socks, because sometimes he's really good about putting his dirty clothes in the laundry room and sometimes he's not, and I was banking on not because it was right before bed. But his clothes were still on the floor, no socks. So I like picked up the pants and shook them out, and no socks. So I went in his room because he had put himself to bed. So I went in to tuck him in and tell him goodnight and everything. And I was like, where are your socks? And he was like, on my feet. Mom, they're not dirty. So clearly he really likes socks because he put them back on, and he doesn't usually put on socks before he goes to bed. So fantastic. The pattern is really well written. Again, it's my first pair of socks using the OMG heel, but the second time I did the OMG heel, and it was really, really cool. The ladies at my knitting group were like, oh, that's interesting. So I highly recommend giving it a look if you're looking for a new heel to try. It fits his foot really well. I will probably put it in a pair of socks for me. And maybe it will be my favorite new heel, but it's not yet. I do enjoy it. My other FO, Winter Games. I finished the Gotland. So this is 100% Gotland from Two Sisters, and I don't know where that tag is. It's in the show notes. You can find them through the show notes. And this turned out to be about 320 yards from 110 grams. And it's a fingering weight, but it's a dense fingering weight because I spin worsted. So there you go. That is this yarn, and for comparison, I don't know if you'll be able to see that they're basically the same. No, that one's a darker color, so it looks like it's thinner because that's what darker colors do, but it's definitely a fingering weight. I did the wraps per inch and everything. It was 15 wraps per inch. Finished, plied, washed, and everything before the closing ceremonies, so I'm pretty proud of that. And yesterday at my knitting group, I showed it off because obviously that's why you go to knitting groups, right? So you can show it off and have immediate feedback. This is great. Podcasting is great. I can show you my things, but I don't get the immediate feedback. So I took it, and my knitting lady, like Lorraine, the lady who loaned me her spindles and taught me how to spin and everything, she was like, you need to enter that in the competition. So if you're going to the Lexington, the Kentucky Fleece and Fiber or something, Sheep and Fiber, I don't know, that's happening in Lexington. I guess this is going to be on competition there because she is quite insistent. It will look nicer because she's going to help me wind it off and do all the things to get a competition ready, but like wind it off onto a 2-yard knitting knotty. I don't have a knitting knotty. I use the towel rack in my bathroom, and it is about a yard. So that's what I use, and yeah, I'm really, really proud of it. I think it turned out really well. And all those random colors are just ties. Because I'm too lazy to count all the way through how many times it's gone around. So I'll just show you how you can be lazy like me. So each tie is 100 wraps, and each little section of the tie is 25. So works in progress. Started the Cubist Socks by Cookie A. And this yarn is Nooch Fiber in the Morningside sock in colorway Princess. So this is their old labels. There you go. The information's still good, it's just they've changed labels. So here's what they will look like. Have this really cool cube design, and you are looking at the heel right now. I've just started the heel. I'm 4 rows into it. I'm not doing the patterned heel because I did not do a full leg chart pattern. This is a free pattern. I'm making these socks for Hazel. We're trading socks for a sweater. And she likes really short legs. So this is about 2 inches, and I took out a bunch of the cuff length and I took out some of the leg length, which then cut into the heel. The heel is patterned, but I'm not going to do that. Also, this is 100% superwash merino, so I am just going to do a modified Eye of Partridge heel to make it a little bit thicker, give it a little more wear. And I also wanted to talk about how, obviously I'm doing these socks 2 at a time, magic loop, and some people do their magic loop from, they split the yarn first. I do not, so I'm working out of one cake, and when I work on this, obviously my cake winding skills are, they leave a little bit to be desired, but whatever. The yarn works and it doesn't usually get tangled on itself. It just doesn't look very pretty. Anyway, when I'm working, I sit this part where the yarn is coming from the center, I set that part of the cake flat, and then from the outside I pull off of the top, and that keeps it from getting tangled around itself. And also, when I work, I always turn my work in one direction, and then when I flip it in the other direction, which also keeps the yarn from getting tangled. I know a lot of people have a problem with yarn getting tangled when they're magic looping, and that is how I keep my yarn from doing that. Also, when I do socks that have heel flaps, I do both heel flaps at the same time. So I work all the way across and then all the way back. And not everybody does that, and I didn't always do it when I did 2 at a time, but I am lazy and I don't want to have to keep track of how many rows I did for the heel. And yeah, that's basically it. I don't want to count, and I don't want to measure more than once. So since it calls for a length, I just do them both at the same time until they're the same length, and that way I know that they're the same length. While I'm talking about this, back to finished objects for a moment. So Gabriel's socks. A comment on why 2 at a time might be a good idea and why I think it's a good idea for me. So I worked his socks on double points because that's what I had open. And I did one sock while we were riding home from the weekend. So I was kind of stressed and tense, and I don't do the driving because Steve complains that I drive like an old lady. I always drive the speed limit. I keep what I feel is a safe follow distance, and he thinks I drive like an old lady. So he does the driving because I don't really care. And he does not follow the speed limit completely. So Steve does the driving, and I guess that probably makes me a little bit tense too, because his idea of appropriate follow distance and my idea are completely different. The second sock I knit mostly yesterday. It was relaxed, calm. I did the same number of rounds because I was working a pattern, so I just did the same amount of pattern and repeats. And the first sock is a quarter to half an inch shorter than the second sock. Gabriel doesn't seem to notice or mind, so I didn't feel like I needed to rip out or anything, but that is another reason why I knit socks 2 at a time, because life can change gauge. Gabriel doesn't care. Realistically, he's going to grow out of them over the summer because they actually have a heel. So I won't have to worry about it until Mara wears them. So whatever. I'm not ripping them out. They're perfect for him. He loves them. But yeah, just a note, just something to keep in mind. Obviously, this isn't a problem if you do vanilla socks and you do it based off of measurements, but I don't usually do vanilla socks. So what else am I working on? I am making for myself a Measure in Love, which is a pattern by Megan Williams. I'm using Cloud Lover. in the sock base. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and the colorway is poison apple. So here is my cake. And here is the hat. So this is modified because the pattern is written for DK or worsted weight yarn. I am using fingering weight, so that had to change some things. I added a few pattern repeats of the secondary pattern. There's a main pattern that goes up the front and then a secondary pattern that goes around. And I'm really lazy. I do not want to do more work than I have to. Am I showing you? Okay, so it was inside out. So this is actually the right side. I'm lazy and I don't want to have to do more work than I have to. So I turned one of the rows into a rest row by flipping where some stitches are in the pattern. I don't think it's super noticeable that I flipped it, but I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But it makes it a lot easier to be lazy because now there's a rest row when previously there wasn't. You can't really tell what the pattern looks like yet, but that's an idea. It uses slip stitches to make an awesome pattern, and I'm really excited for it. I made this pattern for Steve last month or the month before. I can't remember. When did I make that? And I really liked it, so I liked it enough to make it a second time, which if you've been watching for a while, you know that doesn't happen very frequently. But I really, really like this pattern. So I'm excited to have that hat because I only have one hat. I definitely like slouchy hats, and I want something that has a different color palette so I can change it up a little. And this is definitely a different color palette than the other hat. I also started a lot of things. Obviously, since I finished both of my works in progress last week, I started the Ashton Shawlette by D. O'Keefe. I'm using Leading Men Fiber Arts in the Showcase Base, colorway Blue Steel. And this is how far I am. This is a free pattern on Ravelry, and it is excellent if you want to try lace for the first time. This is really simple lace, but it looks kind of complicated. It looks very, very nice. I think that it would be an excellent first lace project, and also it would be an excellent first chart project. The entire pattern is charted, but there is a step-by-step way. It tells you step-by-step how to read charts, how to utilize the charts, and the charts are written for beginners. At the end of each chart, it has how many stitches you should have at the end of the repeat. And then something else that I think is really, really cool on the charts. So the way it works is you have these, you have the edges, the center stitch, and then the chart is for in between. And the edges and center stitch aren't charted out. You just set that up and put in your stitch markers, and then you do one repeat of the chart on one side and one repeat of the chart on the other side. And what is brilliant about the charts is you see how there's a bunch of stitches in here in between the two lacy bits? There are numbers written in the chart right here along the center of that open space to let you know how many plain knit stitches you should have in between things. Brilliant. That is so brilliant, because when you're doing, when you're doing 5 stitches, it's kind of easy to see right away if you have 5 stitches. When you're doing 9, it's still pretty easy to see, but 8 and 9 kind of look the same on the needle if you're not looking. And once you get up to 17 stitches, anything could look like 17. Anywhere between 15 and 20 stitches on your needle could look like 17 stitches. But if you know you're supposed to have 17 stitches, that way you don't have to count squares on the chart. You can just count as you're knitting, and it's super, super easy. So if you are new to lace, check out this pattern. If you are new to charts, definitely check out this pattern. It's great. And again, this is Leading Man Fiber Arts in Blue Steel, the show case base. Really, really enjoying working on it. And I anticipate that this shawl will be much bigger next week because I really, really like working on it a lot. And the last project that I cast on is a pair of It's Blizzard Ho for Me, that sock pattern that I wrote for Jenna's club. I figured, you know, I may as well take part in the knit along that's going on in her group, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out the 716 knit group, go check it out if you want to join the knit along. The only requirement is that you use one of the 3 patterns that will be released as part of the club. Or you could do all of them. But anyway, I'm doing mine because it's the only one that's been released so far. And I'm changing it up a little because this is the 3rd pair that I will have knit. These are for my sister. So what I'm doing is did the toe in this Red Heart Stardust, which is a fingering weight, and this is the colorway purple. So it's a fingering weight, it's got sparklies. I made a pair of socks for her out of this before, but I had a lot of it left over. I had a whole skein plus 2 partial skeins. The other partial skein is bigger than this, much bigger than this. I just started with this because it was the smallest. So I did the toe in the shimmer, and now I am striping 1 round with the shimmer. That's awkward to try to show you because it's so small. 1 round with the shimmer, and then 1 round with 716 knit, 716 sock in the colorway Poo Poo, Southern California Poo Poo. So it's looking like that. And this is the 2nd time I've made a pair of socks using this 1 round striping, but it's not the 2nd project because I've used it multiple times in Hex Puffs and my sock yarn blanket. Anyway, I really just like the way that it works up. I think it looks very cool, so hopefully my sister will also think it looks very cool. Not that she really gets to have a say in what socks I'm making her, other than, you know, giving me yarn occasionally. Another win for the Ravelinic Games, my sock yarn blanket. I did 56 squares during the games. My goal was 51. So yay, that's awesome, right? My blanket now has 480 squares, which is 61.72% of the blanket. Ready to see progress? Okay, here you go. I'm going to go from least impressive to most impressive. So these yarns are from Annette. I met her at the ZK, and after the ZK, she sent me some yarn to put into my blanket. So these squares are all from her. These 2 squares are from the Dragon. So they're 716 knit, 716 sock. And then now we get into yarn from the ZK. So these were actually picked up at the ZK. And over on the end, there are squares that are not marked with stitch markers because I ran out. But this whole big section here was done this week. These are all ZK yarns. This is Madeline Tosh Window Pane, Nooch Fiber Flow, and Nooch Fiber Murky 2, T-O-O. This is the Fable that I just did I finished the socks last week for my sister. These yarns down here are all from the ZK, and then these 3 squares on top are also from Annette. I'm pretty sure that I said last time when I was working with the yarn from Annette that Hiwassee Creek Dye Works is amazing to work with, and I actually want some for a project, and I still haven't gotten any. But yeah, I'm still in love with it. I still love the way it feels. I love the way it knits up, so I need to get some of that, right? Ridiculous. Someday, someday. So beekeeper's quilt. I didn't count how many I finished this week, so I didn't write it down. But we'll find out right now. So here we go. Murky 2, which I used in my mystery knit along test knit and just used in a square. This is yarn from Josh that he gave me at the ZK. This is Flow, which I used from for the mystery knit along test knit. And the other mystery knit along test knit yarn was Window Pane. So these three are my Greek Fire shawl. Those are my colors. This is Wicked Cool in the shoot base, I believe, from Daisy Knits. I knit socks for Julie using this yarn. I knit the Strider socks using this. This is actually 2 yarns. The bottom portion is Mountain Colors Crazyfoot in whatever color it was that I knit myself zipper lexicons out of. And the top is that Plymouth Happy Feet that I knit my sister's Dragon Scale socks out of. This yarn is officially all gone, and this yarn is almost all gone. This is the yarn that I just made Gabriel's socks out of. This is Cloud Lover colorway juke joint. I made 2 hats out of it and used up the last of the skein right here and had to put in some yarn up here. I'm not sure what that is. I don't know. It's dark blue. It's probably a stripe from something else. This is 2 yarns striped the same way that I'm striping the socks that I'm making for my sister right now. And both yarns I used to make socks for Steve's mom. One is this one that's still attached to the needle is Knit Picks Simple Stripes, which is discontinued. I don't think it had a colorway. And the 2 different shades of gray held together. They're two different color grays, gray strands. 3 of the light and 1 of the dark. That is Wildfoot. I think that's the type of yarn, not the brand of yarn. And I don't remember the colorway, but so this is Steve's mom's sock hexapuff. And the reason why this string is still attached is because I am going to start putting some of these together. So some of these still have tails, and I will use the tails to attach them. I am using the recommended connecting that the pattern calls for. So I'm going to start putting them together. I think that the plan is just to attach 1 a day, 1 every other day, so a few a week, just so that I don't have to attach almost, I can't remember if I decided I needed over or under 1,000 hexapuffs to make the size quilt that I want, but yeah, to have to attach all of those at the end, it would just be chaos for me. I would hate it. So I'm going to start attaching a few a week. And also, I have this hexapuff, which I'm not going to show you next week because it's almost done. I left it undone on purpose. So here's the hexapuff. I still have a round or so to go on it. And it's 2 different colors. I used this to make those cursed cable mitts for my sister. And it is, I think it's Premier Serenity Sock, but that could be a lie. And then this up here definitely is Premier Serenity Sock in the chili colorway. So this is completely gone, and now this is completely gone. But I wanted to show you, in case you are hexapuffing, I know some people knit the magic loop, which I would totally do if I had a size 3 circular needle, but I don't. So I'm doing them on double points. And I know some people knit theirs with only two double points holding the stitches and another one knitting. Well, I do mine with 4 because I find it really fiddly, especially when there's a smaller number of stitches on the needles, to try to work them as if they were magic looped but without a cord, because these needles don't have any give to them. And that's what makes magic looping work, is that one half of your stitches has give to it. So I do mine like this, very much like a sock. I find it goes faster for me. So if you've been doing hexapuffs with only 3 double points and you find it fiddly, maybe throw in a 4th. Yeah, it's more needles to juggle, but I think it goes much, much faster. So anyway, how many squares do we have? 10 this week. I had 35 last week, so I am up to 45 hexapuffs. I finished reading A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. If you haven't read this book, I would recommend it with caution. It is very violent, super violent, but it is a really interesting study in language. I was telling you last week about how it was written in so much slang that it was difficult to get into. And about a quarter of the way into it, my brain something snapped, and in a good way. And all the slang just made sense. It auto-translated. So I finished A Clockwork Orange yesterday, and then I went to knitting and realized that I hadn't brought the book that I intended to start reading. So I read some more of Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. I like it, I just can't bring myself to read it at home. I think because I only have it on my tablet. And I just love having a book in my hands so much more than reading a tablet. So maybe I should just get that from the library. That would probably go faster. Anyway, what I'm going to start reading is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare, which is the first book of the Mortal Instruments. This is going to be made into a movie, and I was going to read it anyway, but then Josh, who is sort of a knitter, does the Geo Knittrix Design Studios, he and I were in a VKN, and he said, you need to read this book. I'm on chapter 3, and you need to go get this book right now and read it. So I went to the library website, and I was like, well, I'll put it on hold and see how that works, and it came in the next day. So this is my next reading. I don't know what it's about at all, because I don't read reviews about books before I read them, and I don't read the inside covers before I read them. I pick up books based on recommendations and what covers look like. My list today is that it's almost spring. That's what I'm all about right now. So the list is what I am looking forward to making next month, and it's all inspired by spring. You might not agree when you see my choices, but I'll explain. So first thing, stitch through for socks. They're going to happen. And I totally think this looks like spring, because this is very much like stormy, dusky skies, both colors together. So it's got the red of after the rain, and then it's got this purpley pinky color with the black from the storm clouds, and I'm excited to start these. I can't wait to pick up a spinning project that was put aside because of the Ravelinix. So I finished this finish spinning the singles of this, which is the Faux Angora from Spartacus Dyes. And it has, I think you can really see it there. So it's got pinks and grays. Oh, and you can see it through the top. Pink and gray. Well, my plan is to spin up this, probably this. I have another gray and pink fiber that I might spin instead that's in my stash. I have to pull it out. But this is what I had originally intended. So this is from Stitch Punk Etsy shop. The colorway is Bruised. It's hand-dyed merino, 22 microns, and it is 4.1 ounces. And I am planning to spin this and ply the singles of this with the Faux Angora, but I might use the other fiber. So if you don't see this particular fiber next month, it will be the other pink and black, which I have to pull out of the stash now and look in comparison to the fiber. I think it'll look really, really nice because obviously Bruised is a lot more gray than Pink Ladies is, so it'll tone down that pink, but it still has pink in it. I think they'll look really cool together. And if not, I'm not that worried about it. I'm still going to spin it that way. So, whatever. It should be interesting too because the Faux Angora is 100% nylon and the merino is merino, so those fibers act differently. So I'm interested to see how they work together in a 2-ply. This just screams spring to me. These are going to be made into socks on a plane for Hazel, and it's got like the yellow and light greens and pinks and whites of spring flowers, and then blue of the clear skies. Yeah, totally ready for spring. And also, I talked about the Stash Less podcast a few weeks ago, I don't know, some number of weeks ago. And she is having a natural fibers knit along. And this is cotton. I had started making a dishcloth with it a long time ago, and it had a flower on it, and I was making it for a swap and didn't finish it for the swap, which was fine. I made something else. I just wasn't feeling the pattern. It was nice enough, but I didn't enjoy the knit. So it sat around for a while, and finally I frogged it last week. And it had been sitting for well over a year in this knitted dishcloth. So I put it in a hank using my trusty towel rack and washed it so that the twist would come out. And I'm going to make a dishcloth or, a washcloth or something, probably for my cousin's baby, because I think these are super good baby colors. And I think that's probably why I didn't enjoy the knit, because they're just so pastel-y. They're pretty, but they're very baby / springy colors, and I am not that person. So those are things that I'm planning to do next month in honor of spring. It feels, inside my room today, it feels very springy because birds are singing and there's sunshine, but it's still cold outside, so I'm not doing that. I'm just sitting in my room where it's warm because of all of the sunlight coming in, heating the place up. I hope you made something fantastic with your sticks and string, and I will see you next week. Bye!